So let's start with mentality of the C-suite. To be horribly general about the whole thing, most folks in the major C-suites today are in their mid-50s, are more often than not men, are well-educated, extremely well-paid. They got to where they got because they worked incredibly hard. They worked 18 hours a day for decades. They are knowledgeable. They make tough decisions. They make tough trade-offs. They are A-type personalities. And this all plays into their thinking on social versus every other stream of media that we have. So these folks were born in the mid-1950s, when frankly cinema and radio and print and catalogs were king. And by the time they were 10 years old, television was this emerging medium that had an impact on their life. They, with their parents, probably watched a president get assassinated, watched a man landing on the moon. By the time they were 10 years old, the first episode of Star Trek was showing up. TV was capturing the Vietnam War so people could actually see for the first time, more realistic pictures of what was happening. And by the mid-1970s, our C-suite were in university. And as you get towards the end of the 90s, there's something that's beginning to bug most of our C-suite folks because they're highly educated folks. They're listening to radio every day as they're driving in and home in the car. And there's all these stories about this dot-com era and these kids on the west coast of the U.S. in their beanbag chairs and their foosball tables, inventing things like Amazon.com. And suddenly you got these kids that are worth $20 million. And the hubris of showing up and doing a year's worth of work and being worth $20 million annoys the hell out of our C-suite, right? Because they've been working for 15 or 20 years, 18 hours a day, and these kids show up and they don't even get what this whole dot-com thing is. So the 2000s, a lot happens. The bubble bursts, and I got to tell you, our C-suite, as they're hitting 45, there's part of them that likes it a little bit because, frankly, no one should get to be that rich off of just a couple of years worth of work. The launch of wikis and blogs takes hold by mid-05. Our C-suite, who's turning 50, most of them, and again, generalizing, most of them cannot get in their head this incessant need for a younger generation to just write down in diaries everything they're thinking and feeling and share it with anyone who may want to see it. It doesn't make sense to them because so far it's not the media environment that they know. So the problem is you take this technology, sales channel, digital app, social game plan, and you present it to the C-suite as we have a social strategy here, and everyone just shrugs and turns off. When in fact, I think if you disaggregate it, as we talk about how we're going to sell a bit better here, I think you can get a lot more buy-in. Same thing, by the way, just for Starbucks. I'm probably the last person in the room that's figured this out, but I just started buying my Starbucks on my iPhone the other day, and I love it. It's awesome. But again, it's a sales channel. It's a digital app, and it's a sales channel. And yes, there's a social media component behind it, but this is a very quantifiable sales channel. Now, as you get into more pure social, we got Canadian Tire got attacked by Marketplace, CBC Marketplace, about 6 months ago with a hidden camera thing under the roof of a hood. We didn't engage online. I don't know why we didn't. We just didn't. We weren't prepared for it. And we had 400 comments show up on the CBC website of people giving bad experiences with Canadian Tire. So 2 weeks ago, Marketplace came at us again as they were looking at examples of poor customer service. And this time, our social media team at Canadian Tire worked literally around the clock for 3 straight days. And they scanned the entire web, not just the CBC. And every single person that commented on this story received a comment from Canadian Tire within 1 hour of it going up. And again, there were 497 emails being sent into CBC on this. It was being shared all over Facebook. And we had overwhelming positive response from customers that even were sharing negative stories because they were so impressed that we were engaging them one-on-one. And I have to tell you, it's probably the first time I've ever seen the Canadian Tire C-suite see the value in social. And the value in social for us when we looked at that was not trying to quantify the value of a friend on Facebook, which I'm going to argue in a moment is foolish. It's quantifying the number of people that are out there talking about your brand and the hit that your brand equity is taking, and being able to talk to people about your brand, listen to what they're saying, engage them, and actually act on what we're hearing. This also meant, and this was even just a couple of weeks ago as we were doing it, everyone says, okay, well, what happens when you engage them? Okay, push them off to the call center, the customer call center. You can't engage in a social media discussion with a call center script. It doesn't work. But as I watched our C-suite get their head around this, the light bulb was going on because they were looking at it as engaging customers that were talking about us. One other comment on social. My friend Steve Irvine from Facebook once said to me, and he's pounded into my head, what's true about social in real life must be true about social online. If it's not naturally social in real life, it's not going to be naturally social online. So the notion when the C-suite says, how do I sell stuff through social media? We need to just rejig their head and say, if you're the CEO or the CFO or the chief marketing officer or a senior executive and you're in Tim Hortons, there are these 3 tables of people sitting there trashing your brand, what do? This is real life social. You either totally ignore it, which is odd. You walk over and say, can I sell you something, which is odd. Or you sit down and you listen and you say, look, I can't help but hear you talking about this company. I'm a senior exec with the company. Talk to me about your experiences. And I think as we increasingly communicate to our C-suite the value of social and what social is, and not cop out on the measurement side for all those other components which can be measured. And by the way, I've seen a lot of social programs which are bad business ideas that include sales channels that don't make money, that a lot of people use the cop-out to go, oh, it's social, you can't measure it, which you do no favors to social when you do that. But explaining social in terms that the C-suite can understand, I think they're going to buy into it. One other comment to share, it's kind of like the early 1980s when people said, my God, we're going to have to hire people to come in and do word processing for us, and we're going to have to hire people to come in and do this PowerPoint thing for us. And then over time, they just learned how to do it. Being social and engaging socially doesn't require you to spend millions of dollars on a strategy. It should be embedded inside of your team. You should be hiring people that just do this.